First, a note about paper. There are 3 different types of paper I'll talk about. The first, my personal favorite, is foil paper. I love foil paper. It makes shiny things. Shiny things are good. It especially works well for the unicorn design that I'll be showing. This is the type of paper I've used for some of the other models that I'll show using that design. However, I will not use that for this video tutorial because it's shiny and reflective and tends not to show up very well. As you can see, it kind of reflects a bit too much. The type of paper that I'll be using for this tutorial is the type I'm holding here. As you can see, it's very thin, very flexible, white on one side, colored on the other. This type of paper is very good for this design, and I recommend using it if you're doing this for the first time. This is the unicorn that I did for this tutorial using that type of paper. As you can see, the folds came out very cleanly using that type of paper. Another example, same type of paper. And the last type of paper I do not recommend using. It's very thick, it feels kind of waxy on one side. This is unfortunately very common in a lot of origami papers. It doesn't fold especially well, it's very hard to crease, and the waxy property makes it kind of sticky. Sometimes the dye will rub off on your hands, so I do not recommend using that for this model. However, the model that I'm showing now was wet folded, and this type of paper works very well for wet folding. You can see it has nice 3D shapes, the tail formed quite well with a nice curve. That type of folding is harder to do with the thinner paper, which is more likely to fall apart while being folded when wet. Alright, this is the piece of paper that I will be using. To start with the paper white side up, and we will make a diagonal valley fold. When you're doing this fold, you need to make sure that the corners line up exactly. So don't just fold tip to tip and then flatten it without looking at the points that are being formed. Those need to be very clean. And once you have those points firmly, you can flatten the fold. Be sure to crease it firmly. If the paper isn't creasing well, you may need to use your fingernail for that fold, and run it along the fold to crease it more firmly. Next, we'll bring the sides in, another valley fold. Make sure it lines up exactly with the crease that was just made in the previous step. And we'll repeat this on the other side next. Again, make sure it lines up neatly with the crease made in the first step. And we'll do the same thing on the other side of the paper. So bringing the edges in again, valley fold. Make sure it lines up just the same as before. And there I was having a bit of trouble getting the paper to make a fine point. Sometimes you have to rework it a little bit to make the point fold cleanly. And repeating on the other side. And this is what you should have at this point. Alright, I've flattened out the model a little bit to make the creases better. Now we fold the model in half. It should be folded along the crease made in the first step. It should fold nicely. And in the next step, we will use those inner flaps as a guide for an inside reverse fold. As you can see, the crease made from the first step gets inverted, and you have to make sure that the tip stays clean. And flatten the model, make sure the creases are firm. And here you can see in 3D the shape that you should have by this point. So now we're going to inside reverse fold again on part of the same flap. When you do this, you want to make sure that the front, we're forming the front of the unicorn right now, that part lines up nicely to make a straight line. You don't want the flaps to be making strange angles, so try to get as close as you can to the angles that I'm showing here. And now we're going to inside reverse fold to start forming the back legs and tail. It's pretty much the same as the other inside reverse folds, but there's no useful guideline for this fold. You just sort of have to eyeball it. And where you place this fold will have an impact on the relative proportions of the legs and body. So here you can see that I made the fold so that the top of it meets pretty closely, so that the back is now a point. So this is the inside structure you should have. The flaps inside will overlap. You'll have to allow the flap forming the back legs and tail to overlap slightly.